record. Recording started. Thank you. Okay, so let's see, where are we? So we're with week finals -4. And we're in, we're Thanksgiving week, so it's kind of quiet here. People might be trudging through airports somewhere, or staying home by the fire as there's a storm out here. People are wearing their wellies here because there's a giant puddle right outside of our Magini building. So, and today we're going to go over what will evolve into Project 7 ultimately, which will be based on some of the JavaScript capabilities, widgets, and things like that you can use in interactive page design. And we'll go over a couple of different ways you can do that at a high level, and we'll probably delve into it within Twitter Bootstrap, which we've looked at before. What else is going on in the class? Quiz 4 is open until tomorrow at midnight.
Really?
So why should we go over it now? Maybe we'll go over it next week. Or we could go over it now. I think most people have taken it.
I'm going to start waiting, but
All right. We're going to go over Quiz 4 next week. Okay, Project 6. Any questions about Project 6? A couple of people said do you have to do it? Is it due on Thanksgiving still? Would be one question somebody already asked. You already did it. And you finished all 3 pieces of it? Wow. Scott, you finished all 3 pieces of it. How about at home? Anybody need more time? Or anybody have any questions? Or anybody have to cook for the next 2 days?
I will drive down to Santa Barbara.
Yeah, we definitely don't want Irene thinking about homework and driving at the same time. So I thought Project 6 was actually pretty difficult, and
I'm stuck on it.
although but the 2 people here in the class said it was challenging but fun. Kevin, anything else? Have you tried it?
I'm about halfway through it.
Okay. All right. Mark hated it. More time would be good for Jerry. Project 6. Did you do it?
I think so.
Did you do all parts of it? Do you need more time? Do you?
I just finished what I think was the end of it just
Okay.
before I came. And
Good.
I had to go back and make sure. That
Good. Mark, why'd you hate it?
Yeah, really.
On the page, right, why you hated this assignment. Challenging but great range of concepts covered. I like the project. Steve, blind coding. I like it. Just aren't finished with it. Blind coding. Not sure I understand that. But maybe it means explore, trying to figure it out as you go, along, which is, yeah, that is true, I would say, about the project.
That's how it always is.
It breaks very easy. So, in the charts, or in the charts, yeah. Yeah, like the story, I saw somebody had problems where countries were missorted or something.
You can actually click on the documentation.
Right. So, okay, so, because it's Thanksgiving, it wouldn't be fair to make it due on Thanksgiving because, why?
I agree. It should be with your family.
It should be with your family. So, let's see. You could say, well, Thanksgiving goes all weekend, but that wouldn't be fair. So, we kind of have to make it due by Monday. How's that?
Monday midnight?
Monday at midnight. That's fine. That's almost a 2-week extension from the original.
No, because we just updated that website on Thursday, last Thursday.
All right. So, cool. All right, well, everyone have a great Thanksgiving. I mean, don't leave yet. We're still going. So, today, I think today will be a fun kind of project to go through if you want to follow along. There's starter files that you can download right from the homepage on our site if you do want to follow along, either at home or in class. And they should be pretty straightforward. And I included kind of everything you need in that zip file. But before we get started with the kind of step-to-step of what we're going to do, let's talk about what we're trying to achieve. So let's look at what's the best way to do that. Let's just look at a page. So this is the page that we want to try to achieve something like this. An informational web page that has some interactive capabilities. See, this one has a slideshow, which we've already built in one way, but there's a slideshow called a carousel that is part of Bootstrap, so we'll go through that today. Very simple to set up. It also has this little hiding panel, accordion slider, or whatever you want to call it. So we'll look at how that's done. Again, pretty simple. So there's some JavaScript on the page. It also has some styling. We use Google fonts, Google web fonts, to produce this stylized font. So we'll go to that. Not really JavaScript directly, but another Google API that adds a lot of value to web pages. And if you haven't gone over this in a previous class, I thought it would be a quick and easy way to go through that. Do they teach this in the HTML5 class, web fonts using Google or
Google.
Fonts? Okay. Yep. And then the real core of the JavaScript in this project is going to be this element right here, which is being fed from Google Maps. And this is actually the JC. This is, in fact, this is Magini, I think, right here. Right? And there's the tennis courts. And this is one of these trees. So the content is part of the, and this is a custom overlay icon. So it's just a PNG file that we overlay into our map. So we're going to learn how to do that. So in the zip file that you can download is this content. The page is already there, and it's a pretty interesting story. I don't know if anyone's into trees, or has anybody ever heard of the Dawn redwood? But there were, redwoods in California. There was which are part of the sequoia family of trees. In prehistoric times, there were these trees called metasequoias, and there were fossils that you see right there. There's fossil evidence of them, and we knew that a lot of the world had redwoods all around it, and now they're just in California. But in 1941, they found a stand of metasequoias, which they thought were extinct, in China. And so there's still one species of them. And now they're all over the world, and there's one actually at the JC. And it's just right outside our building, in fact. It's right over there. So, and metasequoias are pretty cool. They're like redwoods, except they're deciduous. So they lose their leaves, and they look like that in the fall. That's kind of like what ours looks like right now. And while they were pretty much thought to be extinct until 1941, and when they were found in China, now they're all over the place because they propagate relatively readily. So it's all in here. All the stuff came from Wikipedia, and it's kind of an interesting story. I copied and pasted it, so it looks like there's some character problems maybe right here, but and there's plenty more information on Wikipedia. I didn't take it all, but it's just content. You don't have to read it. It's not going to be on the test, but I just needed something to fill a page. So let's talk about, and there's many other widgets that we could explore as we go through this. I just started to put this page together. But let's talk about how something like this is done. So we've learned a lot about jQuery in this class, which is an external JavaScript library that has a bunch of functions that could be applied to DOM elements primarily to put more functionality onto your page, or maybe make it simpler to use JavaScript on your page, right? And we've gone through that in a couple of weeks, so that should be pretty familiar. What we're looking at now is sort of another higher level class of libraries that we can use that come with widgets that are prepackaged. So we don't have to use jQuery directly to do things like accordion panels, menus, slideshows, things like that. We're looking at a couple of libraries that provide these features sort of out of the box, as long as you download them or link to them or whatever. So probably one of the most popular ones right now is called jQuery UI, right? jQueryui.com. And jQuery UI is from the same developers as the jQuery library, and it is also free, open source, all of that, and it provides a bunch of functionality that goes beyond what JavaScript can do, although it's all built on JavaScript. So, and if you just go down the side here, you can see all the features that come with jQuery UI. And the website is probably one of the coolest web developer websites around, in the sense that everything is really well documented. Everything, the examples are right on the page. So there's a draggable feature, right? And you can just see how it works, and you could view the source, and you could see, exactly what you need to do in JavaScript, in HTML, and possibly in CSS to get that code to work, right? And draggable is kind of cool, but it doesn't really help unless you have a droppable, right? So they're kind of two interactions, but they're both supported in jQuery UI. Resizable, where you could take an element like a div, right? Most text areas now are, I think most browsers will resize a text area by default, I believe, but this will resize any element, including your container, your page wrapper. So you could let your user decide what their page margins are, right? So something is selectable, like you click on it, you could get a multi-select. These are obviously elements. When we select an element, obviously, we probably get an array back that will allow us to do something with it, right? We could have used something like this with our class registration, right? Because with sortable, it gets even cooler. You could say, well, I want to take that on Tuesdays. And so this is what I call the Netflix widget, right? This is how you sort your queue in Netflix. Right? I don't know if everyone, maybe I'm the only person that uses Netflix. I don't know. Yeah. So you have to, yeah, so we'll get into, your question is, do you need a new library, or is this all part of jQuery? So this is not part of jQuery. It's from the same developers as jQuery, but it's on its own website, it's its own library. And all these features are built on jQuery. You need jQuery. In fact, you need the appropriate version of jQuery for the appropriate version of jQuery UI. They have to sort of be, there might be dependencies in a specific version, right? But yeah, it is a separate library, and I'll show you how you get that in a minute. So let's go through the features. So these are sort of the interactive features. The widgets you've probably seen on websites, or you might have used before, but there's the accordion widget, which is a great way of saving page real estate for repeatable elements. if you have a blog, stream where you want to put more of the body in, but you don't want to put it all in a sidebar, you could use something like this. Really makes it look professional. Autocomplete. You've seen this on web pages. I don't know what they're using here. We could take a look for their data source. Yep, so it's just a JavaScript object. But you take an array essentially of values, and I guess none of them have an A in it. Oh, there. And it'll do that autocomplete feature that you see in text fields. Okay? Where you can just select the appropriate value. So you create a function and then you just add the autocomplete jQuery UI function to the element that you want. Page and what data source to use. Right? So buttons are kind of cool, but HTML is catching up. They're not as, they might be more stylable now, but the browsers do a pretty good job at the button element now natively. And messing around with it has pros and cons. But the date picker is pretty cool. And although browsers will ultimately have a date picker, there's a date type for the text type. For the text, for the input field, input element. But I think it only works on Opera right now. Yeah. So, and it might work on mobile browsers, but I think it uses spinner controls and not a real date picker, at least on an iPhone, at least on the version I have. So, so this, one of the things about jQuery UI, in addition to providing all these widgets, is they provided them in a way that they pretty much work on all browsers in all environments. With one caveat that I might as well mention it now. So jQuery UI is kind of cool, but it doesn't really have a lot of capabilities on mobile. It doesn't have responsiveness, and some of these widgets might be overridden by mobile, or might not display well on mobile environments, right? That said, the jQuery team has come up with a third library called jQuery Mobile, right? Which has some different sets of widgets and a whole different theming approach, right? And we'll get into that in a minute. I just want to bring that up before we get going. So, now is a good time to talk about it. So, there's jQuery UI, which we're looking at now. Before I go through all the widgets, there's jQuery Mobile, which is really only appropriate for mobile websites. You don't use jQuery Mobile to build a website so that it's adaptable to mobile. You typically use jQuery Mobile to build a website that is only accessed by mobile devices, because it has widgets that are really designed and capabilities that are really designed for mobile devices, including iPads or tablets. Now, how do you do that, you would say? If I have a website, my business has a website, how do I have a mobile website and a non-mobile website? Well, it's pretty straightforward to use either JavaScript or some other capability in Apache, like the HT access directives, to redirect selected traffic, selected types of devices, so that if they come to your website, you could say, you go to this different area of my website, mysite.com/mobile or m.mysite.com or something like that, a subdomain, that only those users get to that area of that site, right? And the navigation within that site all presents typically pages that are laid out in jQuery Mobile, right? So the benefit of that is you get some really nice mobile capabilities right out of the box using jQuery Mobile. The downside is you have kind of two separate websites. and you typically have to maintain them separately in terms of content, unless you come up with some techniques like using AJAX to read your pages into your jQuery mobile site, or using RSS, let's say, if your site is in a CMS like WordPress or something like that. So if you don't do that, you've got a mini site that looks great, but every time there's a new event, it's not going to show up on there by default unless you put it on that site, and you wind up with two sites. So there's pros and cons to this approach, and a lot of people now are looking at the approach that's taken with this third library, which is Twitter Bootstrap, which offers a lot of some of the components that are available in jQuery UI, but it's based on a scaffolding framework that supports a responsive approach to supporting mobile devices, right? So what's the difference? If a mobile user comes to your website, instead of redirecting them to a whole different mini site on a separate domain, using media queries, it inspects the device and says, what's the best way to lay out this page given the width and maybe other attributes of that device? Does that make sense? It's the same website, it's the same web page, it's the same code. It's just responding to the visitor's device, typically the screen width, and presenting a different layout. Right? And most of that is built into the scaffolding. We looked at this in the first project that we did with the grid, but today we'll look at it in the context of a page, so it might be a little bit easier to see. So, but all of that is an important, a very important point, probably the most important point of the day. Before we get into how you use this stuff, it really is important to understand when and what the appropriate tool is to use for what you're trying to do. So, if all you're doing is something like the AJAX call that we did in last week's project, right? jQuery has AJAX and getJSON and those functions built within it. You don't need these libraries. These libraries are typically for more interactive type of things. So we'll go back to jQuery UI now and look at some of the features, and then we'll get into Bootstrap. But the important distinction is, do you want to have a mobile site or a responsive site? And if you and these days you typically want to have one or the other, because mobile traffic is probably 20% on average on most sites now, and it's growing pretty quick. So let's go back to jQuery UI and its widget. So we looked at the date picker. The dialog is very similar to the alert modal window that pops up in native JavaScript, in the browser's native window capability. It just adds a little bit more functionality. You can put buttons on it easier. You could, it's kind of like Button. It overlays, it's a different way of approaching alert, essentially. And maybe making it more stylable and more what jQuery UI calls themable, and maybe more functional, slightly more functional. So we probably don't have time to go through every single one of these. Menus should be pretty straightforward. Drop downs, right? And I think that I'm pretty sure they support horizontal and vertical. And I think that's new with jQuery. This version of jQuery, I think, is 1.8, 1.9. Yeah, I don't think that was in 1.8. Progress bar. So for things like AJAX or other things like audio play. Remember when we did the audio for sleep type of thing? This progress bar would have been a great feature to add in that. And I think a couple of people actually did do that. Slider. So slider is an interactive thing where you can actually put a widget on the page that is an input element that allows a user to give you a numeric value, right? And you tell it what the range of numeric value is. So for things like volume or opacity or size of something, font size, I've seen people use this for font size, even though you probably don't want to do that. It's built into the browser now. Optical zoom in the browser, as I call it. So, Spinner. Spinner is, it's kind of like a up-down chooser. And you could turn it on and off. You could totally take it away. You could get the value that, you know, so this is just showing some of the events available on the Spinner. So again, this is something I think that's in HTML5. Well, let's say you're on a e-commerce checkout page, and you have a product in your shopping cart, and you might want to say, do you want to add more? You know, how many items do you have? So you bought something that you would typically buy in lots, you know, candles or whatever. You know, so you take one, and then you say, well, I really want, you know, 4 or 5. In that case, you probably wouldn't have negatives. And you know, what you do is you put the somewhere in here. I'm sure you could set the bounds of the acceptable range. I'm pretty sure it has to be numeric for a Spinner. I might be wrong. Let's see. Right. Yeah, because it. Yeah. Where's destroy here? Where's destroy? Oh, destroy is cool.
Well, this is you source. I did a Spinner, and it says destroy. I'm right. I'm always looking for
destroy. Destroy is. This is destroy right here, I think. Yeah, maybe not. This is destroy. Toggle widget. So the programmer has a more aggressive way of referring to what that does than the user interface person, which named it much nicer. Toggle. Yeah. But that actually destroys it. So let's see. Spinner tabs. Tabs are kind of like accordion in a way. So you have panels that are hidden. One panel that's visible. It's just a different way of navigating through it. Again, really easy to set up. Your markup identifies the element that's being, you know, the outer wrapper, and then the inner wrappers just have an ID. Yeah, that's really all you have to do. Okay, call tabs on it. It's not using a list, it's using the inner divs. The list is the content. Or maybe not. Yeah, let me see. Oh, yeah, these are the tabs. You're right, I'm sorry. And these correspond to the IDs of the divs. Yep. So we could do that on our page. We'll get to that. Let's see. Show, hide, all of these things. Oh, some effects are pretty cool. Let's see. This is pretty cool. So, run the effect. So, the shake is pretty cool, right? When somebody gets the password wrong or gets the wrong answer, right? That's pretty good feedback.
Will you rewrite your code?
Now, if Kate had that, you wouldn't need to get that email. You know, you just get a little shake when you. That'd be pretty cool.
Not shaking.
Clip. My favorite is explode, especially for like alerts or dialogues. Putting a dialogue with a close explode effect is pretty cool. Fade, of course. So pulsate. That might be pretty annoying, actually.
Yeah, it might actually. Well, like with.
Puff. That's pretty cool. That's almost as cool as explode. So obviously, jQuery UI is a lot of fun. You can play around with this. It's worth the price. Justin, he probably already has. So let's go over to Twitter Bootstrap because I want to kind of compare and contrast some of its capabilities. Okay? So as I said, the first thing is it has this scaffolding capability that isn't even part of jQuery UI. That is, as we've seen, really cool, and we'll get a little bit more into that today. It also has, you know, there's not really a lot of capabilities in here that I don't think jQuery UI has. It has icons. jQuery UI has that. It has some classes that might not be available, you know, but this is pretty straightforward stuff in CSS. Buttons we saw, maybe they're a little snazzier. Then oh, before we get forward in this, but I'm sorry, I'm jumping around. Let's go back to jQuery UI. The coolest thing about it, or one of the coolest things about it, is the way you actually customize it for your own website. And you use this thing called a theme roller. And you get to the theme roller, I guess, just by clicking. There we go. Just click on themes. And you get this little widget here, and I guess my screen is too small, so they're not side by side, so it's a little difficult to see. But you see how all the widgets are displayed on here, right? If you change any of your theme attributes before you download jQuery UI, once you theme it, right? You'll get that theme throughout your website for all the widgets that you use. So you not only can you override the default styles in jQuery UI, you can do it before you even download it using theme roller. You create a theme and then download it, and it comes down with the colors and theme properties that you want it to have. So let's go through that a little bit. So you could set your site-wide fonts, right? And here you could just, you know, whatever. I don't know if it'll take that. Pull out a cat. Maybe. Looks like it, right? You could change your font size, what? You know, you're doing this pretty much at the body element, as you can tell, or, you know, whatever it uses in the theme. But so you could change the border radius of all of your widget elements, right? So this is using, I think, a 4 pixel if we wanted to make it a really round site. Does that look like it? Doesn't it? Yep. So you could change your, you know, colors of your different things. Like these are the headers. So if we let's do this. Yep. There should be. I think it's here, right? Yeah, we're a little gray here, so we want to go. There we go. Right. I don't know if I like that pattern. Maybe something a little bit more subtle. I'm a child of the 60s. Here we go. Paisley. So the inner, the inner panels. So you could change the color of the background. Oops. Wow. And text, so we can make it. There we go. All right. We can close these. Clickable default save. So you basically go through and do we have any drop shadow? Yeah. Where does it show up? You see it? Maybe over here?
Yeah, I'm blocked.
This is opacity? Oh yeah, maybe now it's showing up. Here, let's go thickness. Showing up now?
Right there on that box in the second, right?
Right here, yep. Yep. So once you've chosen your theme, you pretty much download it, and it comes with the style sheets that support that theme. And I think it even allows you to, let's take a look. Not in jQuery UI, but in jQuery Mobile, the theme, it also has a similar theme roller. Get rolling. And there you could, I think you could upload, you could import your theme, change it, and then export it. So that's even cooler. I don't think you could do that in jQuery UI yet. Yeah, I would imagine. Yeah. So, I mean, they're very similar. So we're not going to get into the I think next week or the week after we'll get into jQuery Mobile, actually build a mobile site. Right now we're just talking about it because it is part of the decision that you make is this the approach you want to take in using these libraries? Does that make sense? Yeah, and that decision is really based around how you want to support mobile users. Which?
Well, I was just wondering about PhoneGap as far as the PhoneGap using the jQuery. I was just wondering if it was travel out.
I don't know. Yeah, so I've never used PhoneGap with jQuery Mobile.
I see it's now like a webpage, which it allows all the phone capabilities like vibrate, pictures, and everything to be incorporated
Into jQuery Mobile? Wow.
And now they have an upload site where you upload your code and they spin back all the phone tweets.
Right. Right. So that's an important point. Thanks for bringing it up.
Just wondering.
Well, one thing, another thing about jQuery Mobile that is an advantage is that it supports mobile device behaviors better than a responsive site like Bootstrap would do. So like swipe or squeeze or pinch, right? All those are supported natively. They're events in jQuery Mobile, right? But when you build a responsive site, that doesn't come with those events, right? You need to somehow test for the environment and then write the JavaScript to listen for those events, right? As opposed to a library setting that up for you. So that's another thing to think about. Like I said, jQuery Mobile does a better job overall in building a mobile website, right? It just does so in a way that's all it could do is support a mobile website. And you have to present two different sites to users depending on what kind of device they're using, right? So, but the point I'm making here is the widgets might be different, but the basic concept of theming is the same. Where you can either theme after you download by accessing the CSS, or you could do so before, in which case they give you a really nice interface for doing so. So jQuery UI, let's go to now to the Bootstrap page. Scott, you have a question?
If you were to download something from jQuery UI as a theme and then modify it CSS, there's no way that you say there's no way to upload it, so basically you could in there after you download it, it would go away and you try to change it and re-download it.
Right. Well, yeah. So
So what would you do? Would you put that in separate CSS files?
well, yeah. So the right way to do it, if you're using things in jQuery UI, you would probably not change the CSS. You would create your own CSS file and override the styles that you want to change from your theme. In jQuery Mobile, you could make those changes right in line, and then import. And then if you want to make changes that you want to make in the theme roller, you can import it and then re-export it. Right. So let's look at Bootstrap. I personally think that Bootstrap is, people are saying it's getting really popular. I think it's kind of cool. There's a lot of advantage to a responsive site, even though it might not be totally enabled, with Swipe and all that. For people who are trying to build a website, as opposed to a mobile app, HTML5 app, for people who are trying to build a mobile website, I think that there's a lot of advantages to doing it with a responsive theme, because you have one website. And ultimately, I think that will be the way of doing this. I think jQuery Mobile, not that I don't think it's cool, not that I don't think you should learn it, but I think over the long run, responsive will be the better way of doing things.
Like when you pick up your phone and your website, you're just looking at certain things that you need to look at. So how do you take those things out that are on the full website?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So if the use case requires that the content be different, if it requires the content to be significantly different, then jQuery Mobile is not a bad idea, because it does enable that, right? If you want it to be slightly different, like if there's more than 3 paragraphs, take this paragraph or whatever, you could do that with a responsive theme. We know how to do that, right, with jQuery, right? You could say, hide this paragraph if this condition is met, right? You don't want to see it, right? In fact, you could do that with media queries as opposed to jQuery. So a lot of what this Bootstrap scaffolding is based on is media queries, right? Does anyone know what a media query is? Yeah, so CSS, it's a feature of CSS, and I think it's a feature of CSS3, might be wrong, and it enables, that's the spec, maybe a little more than we want, maybe no W3 schools, maybe here. So essentially the concept is, it's like a conditional in a CSS style sheet. And that conditional can be expressed explicitly. So, and this looks like, so this is saying is, under these conditions, use these styles, use these rules. And within here you would have basic CSS style directives, selectors and rules, right? But they would be wrapped in an @media statement, which has essentially a conditional. And that conditional could be you know, any of these media features. How wide is your screen? What's the aspect ratio of your screen? Things like that, right? So to answer your question, it's like a conditional in CSS. It's not really JavaScript, so we won't get a lot into it, but this is what underlies the Bootstrap responsive capabilities, right? It does it automatically. It does it in style sheets that you don't need. You could do it in JavaScript as well, but it's, like I've always said, if you could do it in HTML, that's better. If you could do it in CSS, that's better. You know, it's better to do it in CSS than JavaScript. It's more declarative. So, but let's look at the JavaScript section of the Bootstrap website, because that has a lot of the features that are analogous to the jQuery UI library. So, like modal would be the dialogue, you know, in jQuery UI. In Bootstrap, they call it a modal, right? Transitions are sort of like effects. So a lot of things are analogous, but they use, just to make it interesting, different terminology sometimes. You got to learn a little bit more language, but we've seen tabs before, right, in jQuery UI. So this, you could have even subtabs. It's kind of cool, right? And the basic functionality looks kind of similar. Actually, you know, a little different way you implement it. What I found is Bootstrap has more custom attribute capabilities. So in the markup, a lot of, like in this case, I don't see any specific markup, but a lot of times, like this data toggle attribute is used quite a bit. So the markup sometimes directs it, as we see when we'll start to use some of these widgets. The drop-down is kind of like the menu widget, right? There's a nav in the base CSS. Maybe it's in the scaffolding. No. Components. So there's a nav which gives you that, but if you want the drop-down, you need to have the JavaScript library enabled, right? And you need to have the markup chains to support those drop-downs, right? Well, we could take a look at that. In fact, I use this on our class website if you want to see how that works. And the cool thing about it, if you have the responsive theme, if you watch this menu, if you're on a narrower device, it provides a different menu, you know, like more of a mobile menu, right? So it's responsive even to how it displays the menu. So we looked at the drop-down tabs, buttons. We looked at some of these. There's button groups, collapse. We will take a look at that. That's kind of like the accordion works in jQuery UI. And here we see like the data toggle attribute, data parent attribute, and you actually set, I think, here, what gets collapsed, I guess, is through the href, yeah. Just like it is in the tabs in jQuery UI. And then we saw this in the example, this carousel, which is a slideshow. But what makes it cool is the slideshow itself is sort of built into the responsiveness, right? So the images scale with the responsive screen size, right? So that's kind of cool. You have to keep scrolling down to find it. So we don't have to go through all these one by one, but we could start delving into this with that page and see what we can do. But I want to make sure that before we get started at a conceptual level, you understand when you would use this and when you would use these other libraries, And sometimes it's not, you know, it's not so clear. Right. And you could use all, that's a good question. You can use all of them. So you can create a responsive site and then still redirect your home page to get that, you know, real simple, you know, I only do 3 or 4 things when I come to mobile. But then you can have a little button that says go to my full site, and then that's responsive. You know what I mean? So you get the best of both worlds. Does that make sense? Yep.
So you're on a mobile device.
You can have a mobile site, but on that mobile site, you could say you can't have it go to the home page because then you'll have a circular redirect. You know, you'll never get there.
Right.
But you could go to the interior pages, linking from the site, and those pages can be certainly responsive. So even though they don't look like a jQuery mobile page, they look like they belong on a mobile device. But, you know, they're legible on a mobile device. Question?
One thing I've really learned is, I mean, like right at the top, what you'd like to do is programmatically, you know, what's your browser, what's your device, and then go from there, you know, and just automate all that.
Right.
I've never really learned that.
Well, there's we could go through how to do that in JavaScript. There's a tool called Modernizer. I don't know if anyone has used that. It's a pretty sophisticated JavaScript library, and what that does is discover all the attributes of it discovers all the it really doesn't look at all the attributes of your browser. It looks at your browser's capability to support every single feature of HTML5, and that includes CSS3, I believe, and JavaScript. And so HTML5 in the marketing sense, all the new stuff, right? So it looks at your browser and doesn't say what kind of browser it is and all that. It says, what can it do? And then it gives you hooks to fall back on the capabilities of the browser that's visiting your site. So it's not exactly what you're looking for, but if you want to see what you're looking for, Jim, you could go to JavaScript, to Navigator. So this will give you the user agent. It'll tell you what browser and what version. So I think we talked about this early in the class when we went through the JavaScript built-in objects. But there's a DOM object, document dot, right? There's a window object, window dot, which is the global object, your environment in the browser. And then there's also a navigator object, which gives you some properties such as user agent, platform, operating system in other words, and sometimes even the the version and what specific app of the browser, right? Not just the underlying WebKit, but the actual compiled app. And you could inspect that, and Jim, you could do all sorts of conditionals off of that, right? But that's how you would get that information. Yeah, is Java enabled or not? So, things like that. And I think this is Java, not JavaScript, obviously. If JavaScript wasn't enabled, what good would that do, right? How did I get here? Right, yeah, so, yeah, it wouldn't run if JavaScript wasn't enabled.
What I really like is HTML.
Yeah, so you want a modernizer. JavaScript library that detects HTML5 and CSS features and uses browser, and again allows you to get hooks to respond to those. So you don't really care what the browser is; you care what it could do, right? But it doesn't do what media queries do, which is not about the browser. It's about the session. Like look at our class and look at how media queries work. You've seen that, right? So it's not just about it's about the state of the actual window itself. That's what media queries respond to. When they do it dynamically. Think about it. It reads in that style sheet once when the page loads, but it knows what to do from there depending on every pixel that you change in the window layout, right? So a little different than Modernizer. Modernizer will do that. We'll look at the capabilities when it loads, but not dynamically like media queries. So you would have to put some kind of window resize event to do that, right? So, okay, so let's get started. So you can download these files, and what you get is a metasequoia-start zip, right? You just get that, and you could just unzip that, and you should get a directory that looks like this. There should be an index page, and then I've given you Bootstrap, right? All the things you need for Bootstrap. You don't have to do any of the theming, right? It's all in there. And then I've given you some images, just some images I've gotten of these redwood trees on the internet to make up that slideshow. The icon to the map, right? And then there's just a JavaScript folder there. We haven't done anything in there yet. Okay. So while you're downloading that, if you want, I'm going to go back. I'm sorry? Oh, on our web page, it's right in that What's New section. Download the starter files. Reload it. I put it up there this afternoon. So, one more thing I want to tell you. So, before we get started, Twitter Bootstrap also sort of has a theme roller function. Right? Before you download it, you could also customize a lot of the style and decide whether or not you actually want some of these features, so you don't get the whole library. Right? So if we don't want to use these slideshows, we wouldn't need to get them. For the purposes of tonight's class, I took the whole thing because who knows what we'll do. Who knows what fun we'll have. And we're not worried as much about page load time as we are about learning about the libraries. But you could actually even customize the styles and do all that type of stuff. So, and then you get one big blue btn-primary to download the whole thing. So just before we go forward, I wanted to point that out. And when you get that file downloaded, if we open it and we look at it in the browser, yeah, we've tried that before. We use Firefox tonight. Doesn't have Firebug. You get just all I've given you is the content, right? There's no style, so we're starting from scratch, essentially. So, but let me open this up. Close that. It's a very feminine web page, isn't it? For developers? That's cool. I like that. Okay, so all we get is a web page. So let's take a look at that web page. So what are we doing here? So one thing we do is this directive here enables it doesn't enable the responsiveness. I guess it does. It enables the responsiveness of Bootstrap. So I put that in. It should be in the download files for you. If not, I might have zipped them before that's in there. You could put that in there. It'll work without it, but it won't work without it, I don't think, on a mobile phone. So that might be something I've added since the zip files. And if you need that statement, you can always go to. I know I jump around a lot. You can always go to Bootstrap, the scaffolding page, and way at the bottom, you can get this line right here. So it's good to get familiar with these pages. You know, we went through jQuery UI in pretty depth. With Bootstrap, it's a little trickier. There's like 4 or 5 different sections, and sometimes, as you saw before with nav, sometimes it's hard to tell where they put them. Yeah, and you know, if you don't, everything will work, but it won't work on a mobile phone. So it's just, the only reason you need that is if you want to see your project. I'm not going to grade you on that for this project, but if you want to see it in a mobile phone, show your mom the cool project you built, then you would want that. And to do so on an iPhone, we'll do that there. Or an iPod, or an iPad, or a, you know what I mean, any mobile device. So let's go back to our code. So that's what that does. I've given you jQuery, you know, the jQuery.com link, the CDN link, CDN Content Delivery Network. So one place that everyone could go to get that file, so that it might be already cached in the browser. And so we don't have to download it. We just refer to it. Then just a bunch of content, right? Body, H1s, Ps. You know, nothing fancy at this point. And then what I've done is I've given you a very small script, and this will cause a JavaScript error until we add to it, because the page doesn't know what this variable is at this point. We're going to add that library when we do Google Maps. But the reason I added this is because I wanted to give you the longitude and the latitude, and it's a simple way for me to put it in the page without you having to look it up or anything, right? But if you ever want to find out a longitude and latitude, you could do what? You could go to Google. Does Google Maps support it? I think Google Earth does. Google Maps might give you. Yeah, it might. Yeah, Google Maps has this. We're going to go into Google Maps tonight, but it has this capability called geocoding and geo-uncoding or whatever, decoding, which takes an address and gives you a longitude and latitude, or the reverse, right? But in this case, we're just putting it right at a XY on the map, right? Longitude and latitude. So I'm not using an address. We don't need to use geo decoding or encoding, whatever it is. Right? So at this point, all you need to know, this should be familiar. This is just a variable declaration of a JavaScript object. And those will be the options that we're going to pass to our Google Map, and I left them in there just so you have the latitude and the longitude as part of your page. Think about it, that's part of the content. You know, and this is, yeah, well, it's part of the content. So, so let's see, to get started, I didn't really put a step-by-step page up. So we're kind of, improvisation is probably a better way of putting it. Flying by the seat of our pants might be another way. No, there is a plan. We'll just figure it out as we go, right? So the first thing about Bootstrap is let's use its style capabilities, right? So the reason I don't have a plan is we could just kind of go through some of these things. So the first thing you do to create a page layout in Bootstrap is you use the container. You usually use the container class, right? Because it's in the container class. Let's see, that you could define whether you want a fluid design or not. Because we're using a responsive design, we don't really want a fluid design. The responsiveness will take care of that, right, and do a better job of it, right? So we just want to create a container that wraps our page in there. You don't have to use a container. You could use rows, which will also contain your span, your your divs of class span, I'll call them spans, although that's not right because there is a, maybe I won't call them spans. But your divs of class span like these, which will be your columns in this layout. But it's a good practice, I think, to use container. So, so we'll go to our page, and we'll wrap the body in a div with a class equal to container. And you could, by good convention to use quotes. Although it's up to you. And then at the bottom, we could wrap that in that container, right? So you can see now that we look at our page and reload it, it's already starting to look great, right? Where's my container? What do I need to do? Well, I need to get the CSS style sheet in there. Just because I have the folder in the site doesn't mean that I have the style sheet, right? So I would link in the style sheet now, and Bootstrap, you could, for this purposes of this, I wouldn't take the minified, just so you could see it. I mean, you know, we don't care about page load. Not that we don't want to edit this file, probably. We would want to edit our own CSS style sheet that overrides that rule. But there's no reason to minify it because we don't care about page load speed. And then we would put a type. And then we put a rel. Right? So great? Okay. So we're already getting, we have a little bit of a wrapper, and we're already getting some font. You know, we're getting the, I think it's a Helvetica font, and we're already getting some responsiveness, right? So just having the container itself will make it sort of responsive, right? Or will that happen without it?
In Bootstrap, when you were on the Bootstrap, there were two columns.
Yeah, I will. Right. Yeah, I'm sorry?
When you were on the Bootstrap, there was a pair of two columns.
Oh, for the fluid? You mean this? That's for fluid, yeah. That's right. Okay. So we put a container in, right? Now, what we're going to do is look at some of the other layout capabilities. So the next, the way you lay out a page with this framework, this scaffolding, as we said before, you could create rows, and then you create columns using the span capability, right? So let's do this. What we want to do is have that slideshow being a column, a floated column, either left or right, right? So let's put this content here. Let's say these two paragraphs here. That's okay. In a right column, right? So let's do, the way to do that is div class equal span, and let's make that 6, right? Half of the page. Page is 12 columns wide. There's 12 span classes, 1 through 12. So it allows you to divide up your page any way you want it. 1 and 11, 2 and 10, 3, 3, 3, 3, 4, 4, 4, however you want to divide those 12s up. Okay? So I'm going to say this area, which is kind of our, so this is our title, right? This is kind of our page header. And then under that, we're going to have what I call our first section. And, you know, it's kind of like the first 2 paragraphs out of the summary. What is this thing? What kind of tree is this? What are we talking about, right? So that's going to be our span of 6 there. And then this could be at a span of 12. Right? We want it to be the whole page across. It's the page header. And if we look at that, yeah, so we're starting to get some layout. Right, we got a header, this is part of the header, and then we got 2 columns, and then it goes, once it floats around there, it goes into the other columns. This is that call out section that we put in that first area, right? Not perfectly aligned because I'm not sure I like the way that looks, but what we're going to do eventually is fill this area, and this will float down. You know what I mean? We're going to fill this with the carousel. So there's other classes that we could use that are kind of cool. Like, I think it's called lead. Right? And that would be a good class to use in this opening section. It provides a slightly different typography to any element and makes it a little bit more distinct. Right? This is the summary of this document, and then here's the body of the document. You know, just a little. What is it doing? It's just changing the font size, really. Might be changing the spacing of the letters. I don't think so. Line height, you know, maybe, but it's just calling out. Well, we can see what it does. Yeah, so it changes font size, font weight, height, and margin bottom of the whole thing. You can see there's a bigger margin there than there is there. I put it on each paragraph. I could do that, yeah. I could do it. Very good. Same effect? Nope.
Can I remove one of the class? That second class?
Ah, yeah, thank you. Lead, bled, whatever. Yep, very good. Why write something twice when you can do it once? Very good, thank you. So, let's see. What other classes are there that we could take a look at? Let's go back to the page. Yeah, well, well, you're basically laying out things into columns, so it's still going to apply the same basic principles of gravity of HTML, right? Yeah. So to get, you know, where did I find that lead class? Basically, you go to the, where is it? I lost the menu. There it is. I think it's called the base CSS. And if you look at the typography, there are, here, lead body copy, right? And you just put lead in there. And it doesn't say exactly in this documentation what it does, but it shows you what it does. You know what I mean? It doesn't say what that style means. Right? Yeah, it just shows you what it does. Emphasis. So let's use this. So muted looks like it would be good for our, this content comes from Wikipedia, right? So let's take that class and copy it. And we just want to apply it on that little, we could put it on the paragraph or the EM really. And put that in there, right? And then if we go back to our page, we'll have just styled out a little bit there. And, you know, it's not really part of our content, it's just a shout out. Might want to even put a link there actually to Wikipedia. Right? So any other cool ones we could use? Address is pretty cool. It allows you to mark up an address and does all the highlighting and indentation for you. Block quotes.
You're just playing, right?
I am just playing.
Okay.
Instead of talking for 3 hours, I'm playing for 3 hours. Tables, so it has its own kind of style tables.
How do you think
Yeah, so I have no flow. I have no padding on this, is what you're saying. Yeah, I think. So let's take a look at that. So that might be because I'm not using the row div. So let's do that. We want. Let's take a look. So after we close this, we have no. The reason it's floating is we have no. We're not putting the rest of this content in any element at this point, right? So let's put a row element around this. Div class equal row. And then we're going to close that out right here. And I believe that'll obviously prevent the float, but I think it'll also provide the styling needed to make everything lay out the way it needs to with padding. I think it's the rows that provide the padding, right? Let's try it in the title also. If we go, and the row class would always be outside, would wrap a set of spans that add up to 12, right? So div class row. They have more fun than that class. Yeah, so I think that's what provides the structure within the container to make a row, and I think that's what will fix the floats. We're not using a float right now yet, but we will in a minute. Right? Yeah. So let's see. See it? I'm not just making this up.
What?
Let's look at an icon. So let's see. What would be a cool icon to use here? What could be cooler than a leaf? We're talking about trees, right? So, so to use an icon, we use the I element, right? Is that part of HTML? I don't think so. I think it's part of Bootstrap.
Oh, it's under base CSS.
It's on the base CSS, but I think I don't think that HTML has I element, I tag. The I tag, it does. The lightning. So what does that do? Oh, that's just I tag. Yeah, that's what it is. Thanks. So this I tag in Bootstrap so how, if there already is an I tag, how does it override it? Who knows? Let's grab it and put it somewhere appropriately on our page, like maybe right. And what do we want? Leaf? So we'll have like a little insignia at the start of that little paragraph section, theoretically. Yeah, so we have a tiny little insignia, right? maybe
Could you put it like part of the paragraph?
I could do that. Yeah, because it's a, is it a block element? It's an inline image element.
I want to space now.
You are so sneaky.
Good.
I need this is the word.
You're right, you need a space. In fact, you need a space and an end dash. Right? And now we've got a nice little,
I don't like dash.
you don't like the dash.
Now why don't you make the leaf bigger?
You can't do that, that's totally different.
You can't? You can't make the icon the leaf bigger?
I'm sure, yeah, there's a way to do that. You want to do it? All right.
You're playing.
I think that,
Well,
you have, well, let's see. Well, no, because it's part of a, well, no, it's part of a, all the icons are in one image, and you're looking at a viewport of just that image, of that. So you'd have to change the image to do that and change all the way. I think that's how it works. Maybe there's a way to do it in Bootstrap.
So it's not like that thing that you do a press release.
I don't, you know, maybe there is. Let's see. Is there a way to size icons? Is there a way to size? Yeah. Well, I'm looking for.
okay, who's phone? Not mine.
Somebody's kids are calling. Okay. Google Maps can do it. Yep. So, let's see. Where are we in our code? So as we said, this is sort of built in at that size because it's using sprites to produce the image.
I just thought
You can always find your own.
we were kind of having
Okay, so let's do the carousel now. Okay, let's do that. So what we're going to do is in this same row, we're going to create another 6-row column. 6-span column. Thank you. Div class equal and it's in here that we'll put our carousel, right? So let's look at how we make a carousel with Basecamp. I mean, with Bootstrap. Here I got some Basecamp here. So,
You're being paid.
that was a paid advertisement today. 27 signals. So we go to the carousel section, which is in the JavaScript area, right? And this is going to be and we'll get a working example, and we will get the code that we need, and the JavaScript code we need to activate the element, right? So let's just copy this. The thumbnail, the label. I think we have to. Well, we'll see how that works. I don't know. Let's go back to our page, and we're going to put that structure right here, right? And the first thing we know we have to do is put some images in the divs, right? So the good news is I gave you some cool redwood tree images, right? So you could go out and get your own. You could go. In fact, before class, when I was coming in today, believe it or not, I went and took pictures of that tree on my iPhone, so it doesn't look very good. But that's how it looks right now. or maybe like 2 hours ago.
So now I have to go out there and look for it.
My son was watching this video, and I never knew that it's a great tree.
Yeah, they get kind of messy this time of year.
Yeah,
They're
but
cool trees.
I never understood why it kept releasing needles every.
Yeah, it's a deciduous redwood.
Yeah, it's.
Yeah, there's very few. Think about it. There's very few deciduous conifers.
Yeah.
It's a deciduous conifer. No, it's the dawn redwood. You have to when you do the homework, you'll learn about it. Read your homework.
It's really cool. It's really cool. I like it.
So I'm going to put my. Yeah, once you see these, you'll see them around. People do plant them in their gardens, and they're in wineries. I saw one at Corbell the other day. They are around.
They're really neat.
And go through the article. The original one, all of the ones in the United States are offspring from one specimen that came from China.
It's always bad.
Okay, so that's the first image, and I'm just going to copy that and go. Come on. That's the one that'll start up. Okay, and this will be 2. And that'll be 3. So let's take a look at our markup. Right, we have this wrapper is part of our page structure scaffolding. Right, so we have a 6-unit column that's going to come before our other 6-unit column where we have that lead area, right? And within that we have a div that has a class of carousel and a class of slide and an ID of my carousel. So we have a handle to that div, right? And then within that we have an inner, we have a wrapper called carousel inner with a class of carousel hyphen inner, and it's within there that we create our items. So it's looking at it from the slide outward. You need an item element wrapped by a carousel inner element wrapped by a carousel element, and it should work.
Is there a reason you put it above?
Is there a reason I put it?
Above the others?
Yeah, so it shows to the left, not the right. Right? Why does this span 6 show before that span 6? So it shows to, yeah. So, and then after the items are closed, the carousel inner wrapper is closed, we could put as A tags our previous and next, essentially links, yeah, buttons, and we put an element in there to present that arrow, right? Greater than, less than type of thing. So, and then we have to activate. It takes JavaScript to make the carousel work, right? Yeah. So we're going to go back here. It only takes this one line, right? And what we're saying here is turn everything with a class of carousel, make it a carousel, right? So we can take that. All right, I'll remember to get that. And I already have a script tag here. For now, I'm just going to put it right in there. This is not going to work because, can you do that? No. Because we'll get a JavaScript error there because we don't have Google loaded for now. So to keep that in there, I'm just going to do that. Right? And that should be nothing. Yep, I'm going to go get the maps. It should work. So if we go to our page now and try to load this, we get our carousel, and we get our arrows, and it should automatically go, but it's not. I get a JavaScript error. and it says Google is not defined, but I told it not to worry about Google. Did I not say? I saved this, didn't I?
On 962, you Google Maps.
Ah, okay. So there's two calls to Google. So now our object just has Zoom, right? Save that, load that, and everything is cool.
Yeah.
What? Why would that be?
962.
Think about it. Why would this not work? What else do we need? If we need JavaScript, we're calling a JavaScript thing called carousel. I've got jQuery. Very good. So, very good. So, Bootstrap has its own JavaScript library to make things like the carousel work, right? If you use anything on this page, you need to make sure that when you get Bootstrap, you get the JS components. You don't need them all, but you need the one that you need. We're using carousel right now. But you need to get those. Right? They used to be separate files. Now they're all part of the same bootstrap.js. So we've already got that. It's already in the downloads. We just need to put it on our page. So in the header of my document now, I'm going to go script, copy that right there, just to be lazy. Bootstrap/bootstrap.js. I think that's it, right? There we go. So the good news is it did display, the CSS is all that's needed to display the carousel, but you need to activate it, you need the JavaScript. So if we reload this, and now I got 2 errors instead of 1. Did I save my file? I thought so, maybe not. Get file bootstrap. It can't find it. Bootstrap. JS. Okay. And now we count to 7, 8, 9. Yeah, yep. How come that first picture? Let's see. So look at that. Pretty cool. But yeah, I didn't tell it to center the image. But you're right. It doesn't look it.
No.
Yeah. We need to do image management on these things. Yeah, look at the side.
Can we resize it?
Yeah, we need to resize these. Yeah. Step 1 of the homework. Resize. I just dragged them off of the internet. I didn't. But the good news is, look at this. So it's so smart that it responds. When this one gets longer, it pushes the rest of the page. I mean, it's not magic. HTML does that. But it, yeah. So, we did this slideshow. So what's the advantage of this slideshow? I mean, it's pretty simple. It's pretty good looking. There's these kind of nice icons. Let's see what you can do with the carousel. Let's make it more complicated. So, yeah, so the carousel comes with methods, right? Pause, previous, next, and those buttons use those methods, right? How do they use it? Let's look at the carousel, right? Well, they use it through this data slide attribute, which is kind of cool. So we could probably put a Yeah, we'd have to create icon or get appropriate icons or whatever. But it's as simple as I think probably using that directive. That page is going. You got to take your picture.
Yeah, but just look at the lesson. Go home and
Okay, my question is, how do we get the label in?
yeah, that's the label.
All right, so let's see how they do that. So, paparazzi. So, all the label is a styled paragraph. You know what I mean? That's displayed. Yeah, okay, so let's grab that. And that goes right after the image. You can put wrap anything in there.
Okay, wait, what's that?
What
is that?
Watch this, we're going to get this.
Oh,
So,
stolen.
You just put the caption in that.
so here, I'm going to put P. So I'll put a paragraph with that class in there. And this first one is what? What's that first picture? Is it's the fossil. Fossil of metasequoia. If you could spell that right, every time on this page, you get extra credit. And then we're going to take that and copy it. And we'll put that here. And this is a caption for autumn foliage on Dawn Redwood. How's that? And this one will be, yep. How's it? We are not botanists here, but let's see how this looks. Not too good, huh?
No.
Why is that?
Oh, because the image is wider than now.
No.
Is the text there?
There, yeah.
So we need to make it white?
Yeah, black.
So let's, do we have a style sheet here? Let's just do it right on the page. Is that cool with you guys? Let's do it after Bootstrap, right? So all things being equal, it'll override it. Type is and we want where am I going? Carousel caption.
I know, I complain.
Complain about the furniture. Okay, so now we reload this, and it's a little funky because we didn't do our image stuff. Well, the image isn't something.
That's the question. How could the caption is so large?
If you get the image.
What do you mean larger? Oh, because it spans the full width, right? Yeah. So the way to deal with this is you want to make sure that your images are all at least as wide as your area, because Bootstrap will scale them down if necessary, but they won't scale them up, right? So if you make them at least as wide, then you see what I mean? It'll scale it down, but it won't scale it up.
But then that wouldn't be huge.
Yeah, so we will want to crop it maybe. You don't have to, maybe there's different ways you can do it. Maybe,
Sideways.
do it landscape mode. Yeah, but let's separate out problems with the JavaScript. That's really a image layout there. Yeah. So you could design this all you want from here. You could make the background. Here you could go opacity 0.5, right? Which would be a common thing for something like that. Yeah. And text, align, just what would it look like if it's justified? Yeah, it's not going to do it because it's a paragraph. Good. All right. So yeah, you guys get the CSS stuff. So let's do a accordion, right? So we're going to have a Katati accordion, JavaScript accordion test. That's pretty bad on there. So let's go back to our page, and what we call it here is a collapse, right? Yeah, in the JavaScript section there's a collapse widget or capability, right? So let's figure out where we're going to put this on the page. What do we want to collapse, right? So why don't we do this? Why don't we collapse these? Why don't we make each of these paragraphs collapsible, right? Yeah, and we could, yeah, why don't we do that? Well, not paragraphs, but sections, subtitles. So what's the markup look like? So we have a wrapper with a class of accordion and an ID. Then we have an accordion group, an accordion heading, an accordion, an A tag that is the accordion heading wrap. So let's copy all this.
Now, is that where the heading? Oh, I see.
Let's copy that. And the accordion group must close out. Wow, there's more than one accordion group. So let's see. A group includes a heading and the content. Is that right? No.
Accordion group, that's complement class.
Accordion group includes a heading and then the content. Oh no, this is the content. Yeah, yeah. So each thing is a group, right? And a group is made up of a heading and a collapsible thing, right? So here's what we want to do. We want to take that and wrap it around our whole this area right here, right?
Yep.
Bang. And we're going to close it out there, right? So now we have an accordion. Now we need to create 4 accordion groups, right? Or whatever it is. How many other? Let's count them. It's easier to count them here than in the code, right? 1, cultivation, conservation, fossils. There's 5, right? So let's do this. Every H2 is going to be the header of an accordion group. And we're going to close that out, and then we're going to open another one. It was a...
You changed it to something else.
No. It's still an accordion group here, but each accordion group has these pieces, right?
Yeah.
So so these will be the separators, right? For above each H2. Does that make sense? Close one, open the next. Basic cut and paste 101. One more here. And then we're going to close this baby out. So now we have an accordion with 5 accordion groups. All right? Now, each accordion group is going to have a div which has the accordion header. That's going to be our H2, right? So let's copy this. We could have done this more efficiently in terms of copy and paste, but it would have been harder to follow, right? So now we're going to go bang and close that. And then we're going to go paste.
Are you winging this or are you pretending you're winging it? I'm just
I don't know, which would impress you more? The question for you at home is, am I winging this or am I pretending to wing it? I'm not even sure what that question means. But we're going to have a poll. At home, you can answer that. Do you think I'm making this up as I go along? Or is there some purpose behind this? To some degree, web design is a little bit of improvisation. So let's see what the poll says. No, I think the carousel caption class should be on a wrapper div around. I think that's the way we have it. Oh, so that way it just shows them in the P. Yeah, could have done that way, but it worked with the P being class that way. Yeah. So let's see. Yeah. So here we're just going to wrap this around the H2s, right? Yeah, I'm going to get that. Relax. Yep. When I wrap, I'm going to take the ending H. So back to Dreamweaver. So in other words, the H2s for each accordion header, the first one being related species, right, will have a link, an A tag around it, and we'll close that, right? Its parent is accordion 2, and it's going to open collapse 1. So this is going to have a class of collapse, an ID of collapse 1. But first, let's put all of these in, because these all. Well, they are, and they're going to have an. Now this is going to open collapse 2. Make sense? So by now, it's totally apparent that I'm making this up as we go along. So we paste that, close that, make that 3 before we forget. Is it any easier with jQuery UI? Not really. It's pretty much the same process. And one more here. Five, right? So that should be everything we need in the headers. To make it work, we've got to wrap our content in a div that looks something like this. Right? So I am going to, and do we need each of these accordion inners? I guess so. So let's take them both. Right? And we are going to put that right here, right? And accordion 1 is correct, right? No, that should be 5. And then we've got to close both of those. Okay, now watch this. Yeah, we just need to copy that. So that goes there. This is 4. And we've got to close these both out. Okay. And this is 3. Oops. Be careful when you copy and paste.
Yeah.
We want that. We want that. We want to close these both out. And we want this to be 3. Okay, and this needs to be 2. Last one, guys. And this needs to be 1. So that's it. Now we got an accordion. When we load our page, what's going on? Well, we never applied our whole accordion JavaScript, right? So the A's are activated and doing their work, but we didn't instantiate to do. And what that'll do is go through and hide what needs to be hidden. You know what I mean? So the default is working, you know. But without that JavaScript, it's not going to work as expected. So let's go back here. And this is what we need right here, right? We need to collapse the collapse. You guys don't even need to, yep, should work, right? Did we call our collapser collapse?
Yeah, you just copy and paste.
I think we called it accordion, right? Let's see. So do you think that this is what will activate it? Let's see. Jumping back and forth. Where are some of them single? Yeah, that shouldn't be.
I'm just curious.
Where is carousel single? Oh, in Java. Yeah, you're right. So I'm getting it from the same source. But in JavaScript, strings can be either single or double quotes. Right? But you're right.
There's a problem.
There's a problem. I don't think there's a problem. Yeah, I know. But yep, I think it's a problem with your internet. Okay, let's load this. There is a problem. No JavaScript error. No JavaScript. Well, I don't think there's a JavaScript error. So, yeah, why are we getting an error here? So we do that. You need to use collapse. No. Yeah, but there is no. Oh, it just uses the collapse that's here. All right. Yeah, but that's not a class. You know, it's not a. Yeah, well, we don't have it. We don't know if that's. Well, it's. Okay, so go back to our page. Hey. Okay, so it collapses them all. I think there's probably one where we could say it's the active, right? So we could probably say class is equal to active, I think. For this first, I think we could put it right here.
So you're trying to make it so it doesn't collapse?
Yeah, it's like which one is going to be open initially, I think. So if we reload that, nope, that didn't work. So how do we get that? I am just ringing it. Shown. Nope, that's an event. Collapse, toggle is equal to false, parent. Yeah, I don't know how you tell it. Like what makes that one? Accordion body. Yeah, I don't know what makes that first one open in their example. Yeah. I think just because it's the first one, but I'm not sure why it's not opening ours. But somebody figured it out. Yeah, I don't know why. You need to use collapse line. The in class makes it active. Dude, thank you, Steve. So, well, collapse, we do have it. Ah, because they're all in. Maybe just one of them needs to be in. So we take these out.
Oh, that's because you covered it. I don't know.
Yeah, that didn't do it. Oh, so in opens it, it closes it. Thanks, Steve.
Control Z.
You control Z, yeah.
And we want it off of the first one, which this is. Yeah, all right. And let's see if that, it makes it active. Oops, remove it to make it active. Thank you. So, yeah, so in, who would have thought that?
Everybody can find it, but I didn't see the documentation.
Yeah, well, we would have figured it out. So, let's get rid of this just so we can see our page a little bit better. So this is kind of cool, accordion. It doesn't work exactly like the jQuery accordion, which closes one panel and the other one opens by default. It doesn't have to do that, but it does do that. This one opens and closes each one individually, which might be even better. It's kind of how Wikipedia works. You know, uses that same basic method. If you go to
You don't, it's just, and that's
So they
that is a loris. See, like I guess it doesn't do it. Maybe just on an iPhone. I'm sorry, on a mobile. These are collapsing panels, but they're not on a computer. Let's see if it does it in a responsive way. I don't think so. Yeah, it does respond. It's a fluid layout, but it's not. It doesn't have that by default.
now I know where you're wiki.
Yeah, I got all the. Yeah, I said on my page that I got all the content from Wikipedia, right here. So it's their page. We're just like I said. I'm just using it as content. So, any questions about what we've stumbled through so far?
Yeah. How did you find the, how did you know?
That's a good question. let's go to Bootstrap, and it's in the example, but how would you know? Yeah, somewhere it's got to be documented. I'm one of these guys, even though I'm passing down this knowledge to you, that I don't read a lot of the documentation, I just try it, and if I can't get it right, there's usually somebody like Steve K who will help me out. But you're right, they're probably, you could stumble around that for a while, and I'm not sure. So let's do this. Let's do
Oh, there it is.
Boot
If you like it,
strap.
open at the additional class in Word.
Where is it?
It's right under usage via data attributes.
Usage via data attributes.
Quite well.
Where is it?
Okay, right here it says usage
Yeah,
via data
I got that.
attributes.
It's that place where it's missing.
Oh, but you guys are missing something.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we got the free version of the documentation. Doesn't have it.
It's dedicated version.
Maybe if I widen this out, there it is.
Oh, there it is.
No,
No?
we're looking for the collapse
Class.
and usage options.
Oh, right there. Right there.
Ah.
Right there.
So just like the menu, sometimes the paragraphs, some of the paragraphs will collapse if you go like that. So that's what happened. The documentation was there, but it's a pretty stupid thing to remove content. Just because your browser is a couple of pixels narrower than it should be. Okay.
Thank you.
Other questions before we take a break and come back and learn some JavaScript? Nope. Okay, so quarter two. Come back at 7:45.
The source back up.
I will put the source back up. Let me pause this first.
I can make these source files available. I can download.
The ending source files? They already are. I'll show you where they are. Need to quiet down because you guys are all on the archive. Quiet down. Okay, so I have to give you one what's the word? A disclaimer. Okay, so the homework is due on Monday, right? At midnight for Project 6. But a lot of you are going to be driving over this holiday. Drive carefully. Don't think about this class. Don't become preoccupied with why your project isn't working. I've already been blamed for one accident in this class.
That you will not be responsible for that.
Flo is not going to give me insurance if you guys blame me for your accidents.
No coding.
So no coding. Don't even think about JavaScript while you're driving. Keep your eye on the road.
I shall too.
Okay, let's move forward. So we are recording, right? Yeah, okay. I'll put this down, and we are going to move on to the next part of the project. And we're going to do something really simple, okay? This isn't a JavaScript thing, but we're going to do something pretty simple, which is apply a custom Google web font to our, so this kind of uses font face behind the scenes, but it's much simpler to use Google because all the fonts are hosted. You don't have to download them. So let's pick a font that would go well with the titles and subtitles. Well, they're all good. How about if we say Dawn Redwood Trade, right? So that's kind of too. This ribeye?
No.
You want a ribeye one?
No.
It's a little too hand-drawn, right? A little too deep. Okay. That statement came from the female side of the room, by the way. No offense there. All right, let's pick something cool here. How about, right, that's a little too much. That's just a little too much. Redressed? That's not a bad red one, though. Okay, quick use, right? It tells you how fat is this program, how long is it going to take you to download the definitions, because we're not going to install it on our website, we're actually just going to get it from Google's site, right? And it actually gives you the code that you need, right? So it gives you the Google Fonts API. What it does is allow you to load a style sheet remotely with a query string that provides some variables that tells it exactly what part of that API you want to use, what font family you want to use, right? So literally we just grab this code and copy that and go to our web page, and just like we would put in any style sheet, we would just put that right there, right? And then all we have to do is apply the style, right? So we already have a style tag, right? Let's create a rule for, let's say H1, H2, H3, right? And we would say font family, and we would refer to it, I think it would be redressed, probably, with a capital. And let's see if this works. Before you take a picture, I don't want you to take a picture. All right, look at that. So now, smile. So, you know, it must be easier to watch the recordings than to take a picture off screen. But anyway, real simple, real easy, not really JavaScript. Just what are we doing? We're taking advantage of a new feature of CSS3 that allows that allows you to load and use fonts, not only those that are built into the browser or that are available on the operating system, but you can load them from internet resources or create your own and load them from your site. Right? So just a little diversion. No JavaScript. Yes, Scott.
Does this project require server like?
This does not. Yeah. So if you look at, we're not doing any AJAX, and we're not doing any server-side programming on this. So it does not require a server. So I'm just viewing it without uploading.
You just have to,
You have to refresh.
no, the Google thing.
Oh, well, that's going to get loaded remotely, but I don't need to be on a server to get to that.
Oh.
It'll load it even though I'm loading the file from my browser. It doesn't need, for that API, it doesn't need to be on the server. So now we're going to use another API, Google's Maps JavaScript API. And there could probably be a full semester 3-unit class on Google Maps capabilities. Because there's tons of capabilities within Google Maps. What I'm going to suggest is that you go to the page that's on the JavaScript version 3 API. And the best way to get to that is just go to our website and click on Google Maps JavaScript API. All these pages that I've referred to, I linked right on this homepage here. So we used the web fonts just now, before we used Bootstrap, and now we're using this. Right? And that will open this page. And using Google Maps is incredibly simple and incredibly cool. Right? All sorts of capabilities. And the way to see what's available, the best way is probably to look at code samples. So each of these is a link to an actual map page that you can inspect. So let's look at, we're going to do a simple marker. So let's see a map example. So here is a simple marker. In fact, we're going to do an icon marker. This is a Google icon. We're going to create our own custom icon. So that's going to be a simple icon. Yeah, so kind of like that flag. Right? So, like I said, there's tons of functionality in Google Maps. Let's kind of take a high-level approach. So what are we doing? Remember last week we used the Google chart data visualization charts. And how did that API work? We loaded the API. We told Google we wanted to use the API. We created an object that sort of had the characteristics that we for our specific use of the API. And then we passed that data. With the charts, we passed a bunch of actual data, numbers in a table. We passed that up to Google, created an object that was a chart, and presented that in the page by telling the API what HTML wrapper to render that its results into, right? And almost all of those were rendered in a canvas element. So Google Maps works very much the same way, but most of the objects and methods that are available to it are not, they're not data chart capabilities. They're geo-mapping capabilities, right? So show me a picture of the world starting with the center at this longitude and latitude would be the most basic map page. So Map Simple probably does that, right? Draw a map, center it in an X plot. So let's look at the code behind this. You can't see it because it's all in this is all in a canvas, right? And on these examples, from what I've noticed, you can't even do a view source. Right? They must turn it off. They must turn off the Windows. I think it might be. I think it's Canvas. So that's why the documentation is somewhat important, because even though they show the examples, I don't think there's a way to look at the. Maybe it could. I can't even open the inspector. What if I open the inspector and then click there? Oh, there we go. Yeah, it's interesting. So, because there was no way to click, and then where's the script? Yeah, it's not easy to navigate around and know where. Here, that's the HTML. Right? Yeah, so like I said, I found it easier just to go through the documentation and see how they do things. So why don't we do this? Instead of just hunting and pecking around, let's do something specific. We're going to draw the map centered where that tree is. We know what the longitude and latitude is, right? It's on the page. And then we're going to put an icon at that same spot also. Okay? So that example is probably best seen in the getting started. All right? And to use Google Maps API, you should get an API key. You should have an account at Google and log in with that account and go to your API access dashboard. This will show you how to get there. To get that key, for the purposes of what we're doing in this project, you don't need the key. It'll give you access without the key.
So
if you have a Gmail account, you can get a key. With a key, you get you can have more requests. For this project, we're not going to have a ton of requests. And it also gives you more information about the request. You could look at your API dashboard and see how your maps are being used. Does that make sense? And there's other features. But for the purposes of this project, we just want to render a map on a page. Google does not require us as students in a class to get the API key. Right? So, but what we do need to do is to load the API, right? And it's got to be an HTML5 page, right? Because it's using the canvas element. So let's load the Google API, which is right here. I'm going to copy this code right here. Loading the Google API, and I'm going to go back to our page, and at the bottom, am I going to insert this in the script? No, because it's a separate script tag. Right, so at this point, I'm just going to put it above that script, and I'm going to take out this variable, because I don't have an API key, right? So, you know how query string variables work? I'm going to take out that first variable, and I'm going to set sensor to false. I'm not going to use the geo services sensor that's in my browser. Does that make sense? You could tell the API that to wait until the geolocation capability of the browser and tell it that you're going to use that. But for this purpose, we know where we are. I don't care where the visitor is. The map's going to be based on what I want to show them. Does that make sense? Yeah. So sensor equals false. And I could take off these comments and put that comma back. Because now I've loaded Google. You know what I mean? It knows what, it should know what Google is, right? It should know what these variables are. So this should be a comma. So to make a map, a couple of things are needed, right? You need to load the API. We just did that. You need to create an object that has the data you're going to send to draw the map. In this case, where the center of the map is. This is optional, but the zoom level, and I think it goes from 1 to 20. I might be wrong, might only go to 18. But this is, we're going to zoom in as much as we can, or pretty close to it. And then what type of map? You know, is it a road map, a satellite map? And you can find the data that's applicable to these here, right? So this is where I found this information. And if you look at the types, there's road map, satellite, hybrid. And we want to see that tree, we need the road map when we show it. And the terrain when we show it, we need the satellite, right? So, so we set that, right? So we load the API, we instantiate that object, right? Then we create our map object, right? We take those options and we take a div that we're going to put the end result of the map, and we instantiate a map object, right? So this statement does that. I'm going to take this and copy that, and I go in here, and I should be able to literally just plug it right there. Now my options are named SRJC Dawn Redwood, right? Because I named it that because that's what that longitude and latitude has, right? So I am going to make those my options right here instead of map options. Does that make sense? The second argument of your google.maps.map, which is our, what is that? That is our instantiator, right? Our constructor of our map object. And the second argument is going to be the options for the map. The first argument is, where on the page do you want to be the wrapper for where this canvas is going to be rendered? Right? Right? So I've got to now create a div called map canvas. Does that make sense? So let's put that in one of the. I did. I changed that right there. So I'm going to put the map object at the very. Let's do it right here. Uh-oh. What's that? Oh, somebody logged it. Okay. I just want to make sure I didn't lose the connection. So I want to create a new row is probably the cleanest way to do this, right? So this closes out this row probably, right? Yep. Okay. So over here, I'm going to create a div class row. Close that out, right? And let's just do a span div class equal. Well, let's do a span 12 first, so we get the whole row. And then close that out. And then in here we'll put our div ID equal map canvas. I think it was an underscore. There it is. And then we'll close that out. Okay? So now we have a full width canvas. Now one thing that you have to do to make this work is give some bounds to the div so that it has a place to show it. It doesn't, the map doesn't have, unlike an image, it doesn't have a size and it won't create, it's a vacuum that won't create space of its own. I don't know if that's the best analogy. So, but it's as simple as just going up here and saying make that map canvas. Yeah, now, because we're using the span, I think it'll use that as its width. So I'm just going to try to get away with giving it a height. Let's make it a 400px height, right? And then let's, I think that's, did we do 4 things? 4 things is the magic number, right? We created a div. We instantiated, we loaded the map API. We created this object and then passed it to the map constructor. And we loaded it in. So all 4 things. So let's see what happens when we load this. Ah, dude. Okay, so we have a map, and it's centered right about there. And that tree right there is that tree I showed you the picture of before, right? If you don't believe me, we could zoom in a little bit more. Ooh, wow, we could really zoom in. So I think 20 must be, okay, let's see. The problem is, in Google Maps, the scroll wheel on your mouse does zooming also. So you could drive yourself crazy when you're just trying to scroll on the page and it starts zooming. But that is the tree right there. So if we reload this page, it's hard to see, but that is the center of our map. I went out there and I figured out what it was. I went out there and If anybody wants to take the navigation class at the JC, it's really good. Now, I went out there with my iPhone and I clicked my compass and it told me the latitude and the longitude. Another way you can do it is to go to Google Earth, and you might be able to do it in Google Maps. I could have done it in Google Maps using a geodecode, saying this is the address, but a tree doesn't have an address. So if it was a pizza place, I could have said, put a pin at this pizza place because it does have an address, but unfortunately the tree doesn't have a mailing address. So I had to go out there and see what it was, and that's the tree right there. And obviously that's in summer, not in spring. Right? So the last time, that's because I scrolled it, you know. But the last time Google took this picture was obviously not this time of year. Yeah, so we'll scroll in and out because I'm keep on doing it. Okay, so so now let's put that icon there, right? Let's figure out how to do that. Let's go back to our Google Maps API documentation. And if we go back up here and look at overlays, right? So what could you do with a map? You could put an event on a map. When somebody does something, do something. Click here on the map, do something, you know? Click on a state and show us the population, or click on Egypt and see how many times Obama talked about it, or whatever it is, you know? You can have events tied to maps, right? You could have add and subtract controls, right? I took the default controls, which include, as we could see, oops, the zoomer, this is the street map control, these are the panning controls, and this is the map type control, right? So it's on the 45 degree. I don't know why. Look at how it flattens it out. That's kind of weird. I guess if you zoom in enough, it goes to 45 degree view. And then if you go click on this, I think you drag this guy
Or if you keep zooming on the street.
there, right?
I think it must be on the street.
It has to be a place where they run their
Where there are there with vehicles on the road.
Where's Google? Where's, oh, there it is. Okay. So let's see if we can see that tree from here. Nope, we'll never see it from there. So we need those guys with the Google backpack to come on campus.
Just point down the street and double click down the parking lot somewhere and see if you can move in there.
Yeah, they wouldn't let Google in. Private property. Yeah. You would think that we'd invite them on. We'd want this.
Campus police ran along.
Yeah. They probably didn't have a parking permit, was their thing. Okay, and you can see the people waiting here for spots. Yeah. Okay, so let's go to our Google, my mouse is messing up, to our Google API documentation. We looked at the controls, map styles, we looked at, you know, what kind of map is it? Is it a terrain map? Is it a satellite map? What we want is overlays. And overlays are simple elements that can be added on top of a map, right? Whereas layers are more sophisticated elements that can be sort of added to a map, sort of like the data visualizations we were doing. Not exactly the data visualizations, that didn't use the map. Remember that world map was just vectors.
Right.
It wasn't really a map. But there were smart vectors that, not Photoshop smart vectors, but smart vectors that knew, you know, what that subvector represented. Actually, all they knew was that it had a two-letter code, right? US, EG, UK, whatever. Yep. So, but we want the simple ones. We want overlays, and what we want to do is do a custom marker, which I think they call an icon, right? And what we want to do is a simple icon. We just want one icon. So if you click here, it'll show you that it's a very relatively simple thing to do. We've instantiated our map, right? We've already done this in our example, right? We created this, we created this. What it asks us to do is get an image element, and it's not even an image element, it's a variable, string variable, right? And then we can create a new longitude and latitude, or we could take the old one. We want to use the same one. We want to center our map and put the icon in the same place. So we could do that. Then we create a marker object in the Google Maps API and pass it its position and what we want to pass it. And we have to tell it what map to put it on, right? What does this correspond to? This. Because you might have multiple maps on your page. Does that make sense? So if you had multiple maps on your page, they wouldn't be named the same, and you could position a marker on a specific map. Does that make sense? So we essentially want this code right here, and we should be able to copy it and use most of it right over here. right? So our map is drawn. We're not going to use beach flag. We're going to use images slash, what do we call it? Come on. Redwood icon. Redwood hyphen icon, right? You have that image already in your files, right? And we want to take this off. Thank you. And then we want to take this longitude and latitude. It's a PNG, yes. And then we want to take this one. We don't want our map, you know, in Queensland. We want it in Santa Rosa, right? And then we, that should do it, right? Do we want this to be beach marker? We don't really care, right? Could we call this long lat? Yeah, we could do that. In fact, what we ought to do is take this and copy it and cut it and put it over here, right? And then we're going to refer to it as a variable because I want to copy it, but we use it twice, right? So this could be here. Referred as a variable. And it could be referred to a variable there, right? That way if the tree moves, we only have to change it in one place. Right? Even Irene got that. So now sorry about that. We reload our page and we got our icon sitting right on. So we destroy our tree. So let's do this. Here, let's do this. Let's move it a little bit over. Can we scale it down? Well, I have to change the image probably. Yeah, I might be able to. I don't know if you... So you'd have to go in here into your, you know, somehow that image is overlaid on a... I think it'd be easier to... I think this is the Stanford tree. Yeah. So, let's do this. It's right on top of the tree. Let's move it over a little bit. So this is the latitude. Latitude is left, right? So let's like make it, let's take it off a little bit like that. Where do you think that's going to move it to? Yeah. Latitude is north and south. Thank you. So we do that, and let's take off like, let's make that a 3. And watch out, because the tree might land right on top of us if we do this. So where is it? So the tree's here, and we put it, so it's a little bit too far. So let's do 4. Oh, we're in the parking lot. So we moved it too far. So we want 2. We could do this all night, right? So there's the tree, and there's its icon. So 2.5. 2.7. That's it. No, that'll move it more, right? So it's, oh no. All right, let's try that. Right next to it. That's perfect. All right. So let's recap how cool this is. So the world is now at your fingertips. That's not an overstatement. Literally, you could go through the API. Like I said, we could make a whole, probably a 3-unit class just on Google Maps. There's all sorts of just overlays. So if you go back to the documentation, oops, I blew it away. Oh, let's do it here. Overlays. So an overlay just doesn't have to be a point. It could be a line, or it could be a polyline. So what is a overlay polyline? Where is that used? Directions, right? Make a left, make a right, bare left, All those are polylines, you know, from point A to point B to point C to point D, right? So if you are going to produce a map with directions for your business, now Google has a directions API that's tied to their Maps API, so they make it simple. But one thing you could do is literally draw a polyline to show somebody directions. You'd have to write a pretty sophisticated algorithm to figure out where they are and the best way to get to your place. That's why Google does it for you. But they build it on this basic polyline primitive object, right? Exactly, that's what you would do. So polygons, same thing. You could draw a rectangle, or, you know, if you're Osama bin Laden and you want to draw your targets, you could draw a pentagon, polygon, and say bomb there or whatever. Probably not a good thing. So, or circles or rectangles. So different types of shapes where you can overlay and say, we're going to build a mall there, or that's where the new stadium is going to be, or whatever. You can also draw your own images on there. You can animate icons. There's all sorts of animations even to get the icons on. They drop out of the sky and all that. So you can make games out of Google. You know, you can make applications and games out of Google Maps. In fact, there's a whole genre of games built on top of Google Maps for like sort of ultra reality, right? There was a demonstration that Google did of HTML5 a couple of years ago with a band. What's that band in Canada? Arcade Fire, and they did this map overlay. So when you went to the Arcade Fire website, you put your hometown in, and they played a song, and the song took place in your hometown. You know what I mean? Birds flew over it, and all that. So it's really cool. So I don't know if that's still around, but that was a Google Maps HTML5 mashup that was pretty cool. So I'm trying to think of some examples that I've done. I've done trail maps using the polyline capability. Again, just using my iPhone and going on a hike and taking some positions every couple of yards or whatever. There are programs that you can buy or Garmin devices that you can buy at Best Buy to do that. But this you could do with free, basically free in Google Maps. Okay? So this class is just about coming to an end. No, we have to give you time to get to your next class. So that the class officially ends at 8:20. But we will take questions, and if there's 10 minutes of questions, it's fine. Any questions about any of this? Any questions about the class? So deliverables. Quiz 2 is due tomorrow night at midnight. Quiz 4, I'm sorry. Quiz 2, if you haven't taken it, is way late. You can't take Quiz 2. You can take it all as many times as you want. Quiz 4 is closed tomorrow after midnight. So you don't have to worry about it over Thanksgiving. Project 6 is due Monday at midnight, right? If you have any questions about that in the interim over Thanksgiving, just post it on the forum on the page, or ask it now, or forever hold your peace. Is it safe to join Google, or do we give them our life when we do? I can't really answer that. The government is trying to look out for us somewhat, and you could set your Google accounts with certain privacy. But yeah, I don't.
All we ask for is your name and your email.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I'm not paranoid about those things, but you don't have to log in to do searches, and you could even create an account just to create these APIs. So I don't think they're trying to track you just for using the maps. Although I guess if you draw a pentagon around the pentagon, they might think about what you're doing. I'm joking. Okay, any other questions? Joan, you have a question?
I'll send it over to people. Yeah.
Okay, can you see the code? The ending code. So here, before we break up, let me show you. Probably should have done this earlier, but the ending, pretty much the ending code, I might have used a different font and styled it a little differently. Examples/meta Sequoia. And I'll put this link on our site. So this is essentially what we did. I might have laid things out a little differently, and I think I used a different font. But to answer Irene's question, I didn't make this up as I went along. This page was already, everything we did was already done on this page.
Yeah, so the answer to your question is just happy.
So I didn't, one thing this page lacks is the full accordion. I just made I made my own little simple accordion. It's right here, so I will put it on our site, but it's under examples, but there's no link to get to it. It's not in the menu.
You can type
You
it
want to
in.
see what recording and try to click on that link, you can't get to it.
Oh, really? You could copy and paste it there?
Yeah, you can have to watch that. So just look at it, so make sure everybody.
All right, I will put it on here. You see where,
You did that on another one too. I know.
what?
On the examples, you left it in the video. And after sitting here for 3 hours, I'm like, oh,
No. It's just a matter of putting the link. So I will put the link on here.
No. She was saying that one time, a previous one, you put a link to something.
Yeah, I did the same thing.
Right, but when I do that, I'll always try to also put it on the website when I get home. If I forget, let me know.
You put it under examples or in the...
Yeah, I'll probably put it under examples.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'll put it on here also, so you can't miss it. In fact, what is this? Okay, so here's our quiz before your... What's the difference between this and this? Why is this laid out different, styled differently than that? Without lead. Very good. Very good. So I'll put it in our lead section. How's it? Okay, so everybody have a really great Thanksgiving. See you next Tuesday. Drive safe. Stay dry out there tonight. Any questions at home? Thank you. Doesn't look like it. Okay, so I am going to, hopefully I restarted the recording. Yep. Pause that.